So, Michael, we were on the phone today, and you've been doing this business for 20 something years now. You've been doing this for a while. So, what has your experience been with new construction, and what have you discovered that you're going to start heading towards this year?
So I always shied away from doing new construction. When I had a lot that was buildable, I usually sold it to a builder because I erroneously assumed that it was going to be extremely capital intense, right? I'd have to put hundreds of thousands of dollars into a project. And the way I viewed it is there was a risk, right? Because if a project's going to take a year and a half, 2 years sometimes, and I'm pouring in all these soft costs, and then I'm pouring in the hard costs, and then I'm going to sell it later. And that's a long period of time, and the market can shift, and I'm trying to hit the top of the market, which we usually are when you do new construction. And to me, it seemed like something that wasn't effective, and that could get me in trouble if the market shifted like it did in 2008. So what I've discovered recently is that there are alternatives to those things. And I was going to build a house in Elmont a long time ago, and I started looking into modular companies. So just to explain what a modular company is, in essence, it means that they build a house in pieces, in parts, in modules. I'd say a typical house is going to be 4 modules. If a 2-story house is going to be at least 4 modules, and there are houses that can go to 15 modules. They build mansions like this too. Once it's done, you don't know it was done modularly. It's not like manufactured home that you can tell clearly is something different. It's you stick it on wheels. These are houses that are on foundation. And I would say that after they're done, nobody knows that they were built modularly. It's the same stick-built house, so the same studs on the wall and the same sheetrock on top of those studs with the same wires and plumbing and insulation and HVAC inside. It's just that it's built in a temperature-controlled factory by people who are experts at what they do, and they build it quickly. They can literally build a house in a few days.
Wow.
And when I went to see this, I saw a few. I actually went to several companies, and to me, one really stood out. It's a company in Westchester in Orange County. They're called Westchester Modular. And when I saw them, I realized that this is really a really good company. It's employee owned, so I believe all the employees own like a huge percentage of the company. The owners died and left it to the employees. A family that owned it, and they left the employees. Company's grown significantly, and it seemed to me a better option, but I still didn't do it. Right, in that situation, I ended up buying the property, but I always kept it in the back of my head. And they've had through the years like builders days where you can come to look, and I go there and we tour the factory. It's really something to see. And what I realize is this is a better option to traditional building because it's slightly less expensive. It takes a lot less time, and I think it's a better quality build. What I didn't know until recently was that there are options, and these options may exist on regular build also, but I doubt it. There are options with lenders where if you have the plans for a house that's going to be built modularly for sure, and you pre-sell it, and we see this all the time in my MLS where there's always plans being listed for sale. You find a buyer, right? And the buyer has to qualify. This lender will qualify the buyer. If the buyer is putting 20% down, the lender will, in essence, fund the entire build, every penny of it, where they'll even give a builder like me money back for the land that we paid for the land. They'll even give that money back. Then they'll fund everything. They'll fund you have to do a foundation to put these modules on top of. They'll fund the foundation. They'll even give you money for other ancillary costs for soft costs. Basically, it's zero cap. It's even less capital intensive than doing a medium-sized renovation for $70,000. So when I saw that, it really opened my eyes. And I had a property that I was negotiating at the time, and I've done a bunch of these where it's a big lot. It's enough to do 2 houses, and houses all the way on one side. So I have one house on one side, and I can technically get a permit to build on the other side. Then to me, that was always good. So in the old days, what I did was when I got the permit, I would sell it, or I'd sell to a builder subject to getting the permit. Very often I would need a variance. And I have this property that I'm in contract on where I'm trying to do the same thing. And my intent on this one is not to sell the lot, but to actually build it modularly using the system, I would pre-sell it with the plans and have this bank finance the whole thing.
That's incredible, especially with,
And it's mind
yeah,
blowing to me.
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, so let me ask you this. So you're doing a modular build, and if there's an echo for the listeners, I'm sorry. I think we put enough value.
I'd still hear you a little bit echo, tiny echo.
I'll talk like quiet, but what is so a lot of people hear the word modular and they think it's mobile home. So I want you to really delineate that, because I remember, quick story. I remember my parents' good friends sold their house, Colonial in Monroe, for big money. And I didn't know it was a modular until I was 20 years old. Been going to that house since I was 5.
How did you find out it was modular when you
They
were
told
20?
me, and then they took me down to the basement and they didn't tie me to a chair. They showed me where like the blocks were. And I was like, oh, that makes sense.
So again, listen, manufactured or mobile homes are mobile, right? They may be put on like blocks or on a foundation, but in essence, they are not real property, right? They're not real estate. They're considered chattel, which means movable property. A modular home is built. If they didn't tell you, if your friends didn't tell you it was modular, you would never know.
Never.
It's I would say there's no way to know, really, unless you're a really expert builder and you can see where the modules were linked together. It's exactly like a regular built house. It's just built in pieces in a factory and put together on site. That's it. And you avoid a lot of the labor issues. You avoid a lot of the sequential issues you have. Like when you build a regular home, the usual order of events is you're going to put a foundation in, and then you're going to start framing this thing out. So you have a bunch of guys show up, start putting up 2x4s and putting up floors and putting up and framing the roof, and then you're going to need then nothing can happen after that point till the roofer comes, puts in the roof, and then these sheathers come and put some kind of lumber or plywood around the house, and then sheathe that with a vapor barrier. But like you may have a electrician who's rearing to go. He can't do anything until those guys finish. Then once the house is sheathed, then all these things have to go in the walls, right? So you need plumbing, you need electrical, you need insulation, and you need HVAC, right? If you're running ducts for air conditioning or for heating too. And the walls can't be closed until all of them done. So if one
engineer signs off on it, the building department's going in the whole time.
Right, you need inspected. So if one jerk guy who puts in insulation gets to a car accident or just decides not to show up, every other thing is waiting for this guy to show up with his pink cotton candy to go put it up in between the studs, or everybody's waiting for this electrician to finish running a wire. And the sequence of that very often turns into delays, right? And that's nobody's fault. It's pouring today. Well, the framers are not going to work in the pouring rain. There's not, right? Oh, it's freezing today. Well, a roofer is not going to work if it's less than 32 degrees, because the nails get screwed up. It's just, these are things that are not going to happen. And before there's heat, you may have trouble getting a plumber in there, right? Because he doesn't want to work where it's freezing. But when you build these things modularly in pieces in a temperature controlled factory, you don't have to deal with any of that crap, right? There's no sequence of it. I mean, they have a sequence in place, but their sequence is like, this guy builds walls all day. This guy builds floors all day. This guy builds roofs all day. That's all they do. So they're in an area that's temperature controlled, and they're just pounding these things out, pounding these pieces, and sticking them on these things to get on a flatbed truck. It's an amazing. My mind was blown watching it. And these guys are experts. They all know what they're doing, and they show up to work every day. And if they don't, they have other people to fill in for them. So to me, it seems like a much more logical way to build. Now, again, I've said this before, I've actually built one, and there may be other complications. And they don't do the entire house. They do everything that's above grade, but there's still about 20 to 30% of the house that still has to be done. But they're putting in kitchens. So the foundation, obviously, anything in the basement, they're not doing. And usually that also results in the mechanicals not being done, right? So whatever the heating system, they're not doing it. They'll put baseboard all around, so you can just tie it into a boiler. They're not doing ductwork for HVAC, so you have to sort of have an HVAC contractor come in and do that. And if you want a very, very high-end kitchen, they're probably not going to do the highest end kitchen. So you may have them deliver the house without a kitchen, and then have a kitchen guy come in and do it. But short of that, it's done. So all the rough plumbing's run, all the electrical's done, all of the house is completely insulated, the roof is done. Oh, and I think also they give you siding, but they don't install the siding because these things come in pieces. So you need a siding contractor to just install the siding, but they give you the siding.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's about, again, between 20 and 30 of the house. It still has to be done either before or after they do a set, which means they take these pieces on cranes and put them all together. But they connect it and then of course you need a plumber to connect the sewer line to it, the water line to it. You need the electrician to connect the electrical and put up the box and connect the electrical into the meter. And you need, if you're having gas, you need a gas line run to it. So you need a plumber and an electrician to do that. So again, it's 20 to 30% of the house is not done, but 70, 80% of the house is done.
Yeah.
And they do it in 4 days.
Yeah, you can do that over the course of 4 days a month, and you're absolutely golden. Let's talk about something here that people really don't understand, and this took me a while to learn. We're looking to do this on vacant land. Obviously, if you don't have a vacant lot, then you're screwed. So how do you, and I know this answer, but the typical listener probably doesn't. How do you know if a lot is buildable? Like, because that is you need to know that, or else you can't put a house on it.
It's tough. It's very tough where I operate because there's a lot of municipalities. So, Nassau County has 3 towns, and then it has like 20 different villages, some in the towns where they are their building department. There's also 2 cities, just to throw in for fun, the city of Long Beach, the city of Glen Cove. So if you have an area, you need to really look and see who is the building department that has jurisdiction over that area, and then you need to ask them. And there are places that'll be very open and honest with you. I just actually I'm looking at a lot in Brookhaven, so they sent me this great list of all the minimum square footage and things like that, and the setbacks, which is very helpful. They're a horrible town, but they actually have a nice sheet. So you need to know that area, and you need to ask. You need to go. Very often they'll talk to you. Certainly, if you go in person and you say, "Listen, I just don't know what I can build here. Tell me what it's zoned for." You need to know the zoning. So the zoning will indicate what's allowed to be built. It may not even be zoned residential. It may be zoned commercial or business or however they call it, where you may not even be allowed to build a house. If it's zoned residential, then you need to know all these things. So I'll just tell you what these things are. You need to know the minimum square feet of a lot in that area, right? So a lot of Nassau County, it's 6,000 square feet, and the minimum frontage, they want 60 feet of frontage on the street, and then they basically want a 60 by 100 lot minimum. But if you have 60 feet of frontage,
They want it to go back quite a bit.
They want 100-foot deep. I think most time there are places where you can go 4,000 square feet, but that's general. And then you should also know setbacks, right? So it may not be a perfect rectangles, this lot. So how far can the house be? The setback is how far the house needs to be away from the side yard, the front yard, the back, like how much they want. What else is here? There's maximum height and stuff like that, but you can always work within those boundaries usually. So those are things you need to know. You don't want to, and if you were building something that doesn't meet any of those requirements, so let's say you want to build on a 5,000 square foot lot when the minimum required is 6,000 square foot, then you would need something called a variance, which I've applied for. I've been granted. I've been denied many times. That's no fun. That means you have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, the BZA, and you have to say, hey, you require 60 feet of frontage, but I want 50 feet of frontage, and you need to go get what they require before you apply is a radius map of between 100 to up to 300 feet around that plot, and they want to see the size of every parcel of land there. And I know in the town of Hempstead, if you're not 50, if you can't get 51% of the properties that are within 200 feet of your property to be substandard, which means less than that, they're never going to give you a variance ever. So these are kind of things, you can talk to an attorney who deals with this. There are people who just do land use. I have a couple that I use, and they'll help you out usually. Usually the best thing that they'll do is tell you this is never going to happen. That's the best thing they can say to you, right? You don't want them to jerk you around, take your money, and go through a 9-month-long process for it not to happen if there's no chance. And sometimes they'll say to you, it's unlikely to happen, which usually means it's not going to happen. Or they'll say, we have a good chance. And that's, you want to ask. But assuming you find out that your lot is buildable, right? It's zoned for a house. That's what you want to put on it. And the size is okay. Then you should ask them, what's the next step? You're going to have to probably hire an architect to draw up plans. of the house that you're building and a site plan to show where it's going on the plan, then you need to apply for a building permit, and that's the process. Again, there are places in the country where this is simple, something simple. I think in
There's
Alaska,
some places where you can build whatever you want.
Alaska, you can build anything. You don't need a building permit. That sounds amazing.
It's crazy.
But in a lot of places, you're going to have to go through it. But there are places that'll give you an answer right away. And, there are places that'll take a year to get an answer.
I'll give you an example on doing this in Westchester, which is next door to Nassau. I called the building department on a piece of vacant land, and I knew that it was zoned residential. And I said, this is the size of the lot. What can I build on the lot? It was a 10-minute phone call. They said, you can build a single family or you can build a 2-family, and it can be a certain amount of square feet. And I knew based on the comps, I'm like, all right, these new builds are $3.5 million. So I got the lot for $570 and sold it for $620 to a builder, or $630. So it was like a $60K wholesale deal minus a commission on a piece of land.
See, today I would want you to sell it to me, and I would have built on it and made $1 million.
Oh, dude, that property is 25 minutes from your office with no traffic.
All right.
Right on the water.
No problem.
Or near the water. But the thing is, people think this development stuff is not straightforward. Well, actually, it is kind of straightforward. But you got to just understand, like, just because like the ZBA and zoning, like, it's really not that complicated. It's like, what can you build on the lot? How big can it be? And what are those properties selling for new construction? And the MLS will show you all the new construction. You just filter.
Correct. Absolutely. What city was that in?
Rye.
Yeah, Rye's nice.
I always say you don't make it to Rye by accident. You're not living in Rye if you're a Stugat, as we'd say, the Italians. But the thing is, like, we got that lead and I knew that there was some value there. But the person who doesn't know development would be like, oh, this guy wants 600 grand for a piece of land. That's crazy. You see, they're worth $3.5 million fixed up.
It's all a function of what you can get and how much it will cost to get you. Listen, for a $3.5 million house, that guy may spend $1 million on the build, but it's still worth paying 600 for the lot. If you're going to spend $1 million, that's 1.6. Let's say another $200,000 off goes 1.8 to sell for $3 million. That's a huge win.
7-figure deal.
It's awesome.
So here's
these things happen all day. Like, we don't even realize these things are going on all the time. They're always going on. There are builders who are building all day, and they're making a lot of money.
It's crazy. In California, there's so much less regulation with building because like there's such a housing shortage in San Diego County. Like, you can build like 5, 6, 10, 20 units on one lot in certain sections because they need.
Yeah, I know a guy building in LA like that also, where he's doing. He's building also. He bought a few houses on one street. He's putting in like 14 units there. They're allowing him to do it. I couldn't believe it. Because I couldn't believe in some of the nicest parts of LA. There's very few setbacks. Are like the houses go almost like 3 feet from the property line.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's like they would never get away with that crap in New York.
You can't do that in New York. It's especially in our area. It's not like, maybe upstate it's a little different, but I'll give you an example. Here's another building example where you really need to know your market, and then we'll figure out to show up. So if you're in rural Orange County, rural Dutchess County, the minimum lot size per house is like 2 or 3 acres. So some people,
they're monsters.
Yeah, like the land is so big and you can only build one house per 2 or 3 acres. So I get a lot of leads where it's like, oh, it's 20 acres. It's like, yeah, you can build like 5 houses. And the guy wants $1 million for it. Like, doesn't work, You
get that all the time. So what I get a lot is people have, 30-foot wide extra lot in their parcel, and they think, well, you can go build a house there. And I'm like, I can't build on 30 feet wide. It's never going to work. Oh, are you sure? I think you can. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. It's not going to happen. People don't understand. People don't know. People don't know whether things can be built or not. It's very common. It's very common.
Yeah. You know where they're doing a lot of knockdown new builds, believe it or not? Monroe.
I believe it.
There's a street that's about 4 streets behind where I grew up. And there is just normal houses on there. Not the best street either. It's not like Beverly Hills, Rodeo Drive. Guys are going in and bulldozing these houses and building huge 3-4 families.
How much? Oh, 3-4 families for Orthodox Jews to live in and to rent.
Yeah. It's wild. Some of the and the thing is, like, I know now in Monroe, when we get leads, I can pay almost market value for a property and wholesale it for 50 grand because
the builder will pay more. That happened. Listen, that's going on in Rockland, all over the place in Rockland, all over Rockland. It's almost unrecognizable, the area from 30 years ago.
if you have a lead in Spring Valley or Muncie, you can pay like 600 grand for a single and wholesale it for 750.
Right. And somebody will bulldoze it and put up an 8 unit.
Yeah, and ARVs there are like in the seven figures now. In some of these
Crazy.
certain hot areas, airline, like it's crazy. You see them, and you go on the MLS and they're trading the seven in front of or that one comma.
Yeah. Well, if you have a multi-family like that, somebody buys it, moves into 1 unit and rents out the other 3. The numbers can still make sense.
Totally. So for the people listening locally, if they wanted to check out that website you found that provides the modular homes, what is the website, Michael, called?
I have the guy's card right here, actually. It's westchestermodular.com.
westchestermodular.com. So if you're in the Hudson Valley, you're in Long Island, this is a very successful company that you can buy from.
I think they're great. Again, I've never used them, but I think they're great. I've been there
There's
many times.
also, yeah, you'll find out. I mean, there's another company in Pennsylvania too, near Scranton, and they have a
When I drove,
yeah,
I drove out to Pennsylvania to look at 2 other companies too. I don't know if the one you're talking about, but
yeah.
I thought Westchester was really solid.
I'm excited to see your journey doing this, dude. I think it's going to be a gold mine.
I'm excited too. Like I was telling you, I'm not a crier. I don't cry a lot. I didn't cry when my kids were born, but I may cry if this thing happens the way I'm hoping it will.
Well, put your hard hat on, sit back, relax, enjoy the flight, and next destination is going to be billionaire land.
Let's hope.